This is Artful Discourse, your weekly escape into the vibrant world of creativity, culture, and intellectual exploration. I'm your host, Benjamin Kirk, and I invite you to join me on a journey through the rich tapestry of human thought and the beating heart of artistic expression at Fresno State's College of Arts and Humanities. Before we get started today, I have an exciting announcement. This show, Artful Discourse, is now available as a podcast. All of our past shows are archived, and new programs will be released just after they air here on KFSR Underground. To subscribe, just search Artful Discourse wherever you get your podcast. Today, our guest is Candace Egan, Professor of Film and Media Arts and Director of Multimedia Production Services here at Fresno State. Candace, welcome.
Hi, great to be here.
All right, so today we're going to talk about your film, Sierra Odyssey, your new film, and we'll dive into what you and your students are working on with the Portuguese Beyond Borders Institute Oral History Project, and we'll talk about what else is going on with you and production students at the Media Communication and Journalism, or MCJ department. But before we get into all that, I want to first ask you, what do you love about filmmaking?
Wow, that's a loaded question. The first thing that comes to my mind is I love the idea of using visuals to tell a story. I started as a camera person. There's something to me about the visuals and putting together a bunch of pieces and making it into a story.
All right, storytelling. All right, now your new film, Sierra Odyssey, recently premiered at Fresno State, and I'm going to play the first couple minutes of audio. I do want to say that I did some narration work on this film, so yes, that is my voice. But Candace, before I play this, just tell us a little bit about this clip and the film.
I had the great fortune of being at the university and somebody referring the son of the person we were talking about, Orland Bartholomew. So Phil, the son, contacted me and he wants to preserve the legacy of his father. And as I learned more about it, and as you'll learn in the beginning of the clip, it was an amazing accomplishment. I never knew somebody had by themselves. Basically, you think of hike, but it's winter, so they trekked through the Sierras for 4 months in the snow. I just was blown away. And then when I found out, oh, he was a photographer, and the big point of the trip was to take photos of his trek. Me and my visual interest, I was hooked.
All right, let's play that first little clip here.
Where would I sleep? What would I eat? What would I do when it stormed? If I broke a ski, were taken ill, went snowblind, or overtaken by an avalanche? It was Christmas morning in Lone Pine. A sympathetic young man agreed to deliver me and 80 pounds of duffel as far up Cottonwood Creek as his car could get a foothold. Before leaving, I called on Ranger Way. "What's the weather forecast?" I asked. "A general storm. You're going to hit a blizzard," he said. His scrutiny was speculative. "Well, I wish you lots of luck, but," and that "but" was eloquent. It spoke of a lifetime of experience with people who, through lack of experience or adequate equipment, have come to grief in the Sierra Nevada.
Mountaineer Orland Bartholomew was the first man to navigate the Sierra Nevada mountains during winter. From late December of 1928 through early April of 1929, he trekked from Lone Pine, California in the south to Yosemite in the north. He did it solo, with skis, snowshoes, and carrying a 68-pound backpack of food and supplies. In 1974, author Gene Rose captured the essence of this mountaineering adventure in his book, High Odyssey. This story lives on now in a new century through Orland's photos, diary entries, and writings, and the observations and memories of his son Phil Bartholomew. All right, exciting stuff there. That's kind of the intro to the film, correct?
Yes, yeah. And that's an actual excerpt from his diary. So I got access to the diary. So everything he wrote during that 4 months, I looked through and found that passage.
And this is local history. These High Sierra Mountains are 40, 50 miles away from where we're sitting right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can look out if we kind of look directly east and a little south, we're looking at where he was going.
Yeah. All right. So, what gave you the idea for the project? How did it get started?
So Phil, the son, came to me and he shared a talk he would give, and he had the book, and the book by Jean Rose, which I've actually talked with and was very helpful. And we recorded the actual talk, and then parts of it were unclear. There were some missing parts, and I realized that if we were going to do this story justice, we probably needed to write it up again. And then when I found out about the diaries, really realized that's the trove of information. So I basically read the diaries, and then the script I wrote from the diaries. And the book, I think, was kind of written from the diaries as well, but it's sort of my slight variational take on it. And I was consumed by all these photographs and trying to figure out, well, what photograph goes with what diary entry. So
Right.
I got very, very into it and just realized this needed to be a documentary, sort of the Ken Burns style with, the
Hmm.
photos and some commentary from Phil, but that pretty much it was that style of documentary.
And I understand Fresno State students were involved in making the film. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the The original shooting is only the interview with Phil. So
Hmm.
one of my senior students, we both live up in the foothills, and we drove up to Oakhurst and shot the interview with Phil. And then wrangling all these photos, there's 48 by 10s, and I don't even know how many we had from this lovely album that Phil had. So the students were really helpful in the photo editing and really making those photos look good so
Yeah.
they were available that I could then put them in the right place. So there was a team over a couple years who worked on those photos, and that was the big task.
And that seems like probably, yeah, the biggest part of the project is getting those photos. I imagine you're scanning them all in, and then each one, Photoshop, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So there was a challenge. I worked on this project for a couple years, and one of the biggest challenges was figure out how are we going to get these photos scanned. And the album is was put together in the 1920s and 30s.
Yeah.
So you don't want to destroy an artifact to get your photos. So finally somebody turned me on to the right person at our library, and we were able to use a big giant document scanner for this fragile album. And then the regular 8 by 10s, you wouldn't know they were over, well, almost 100 years old.
Yeah.
um, they let me use their scanner. So then I had what I needed, and then the students really went to work and helped me, and they were doing Photoshop. When I brought things in, it was ready to put them in. I was doing Photoshop. There's some composited images in there and some um, but I didn't do a lot of we didn't do a lot of fixing.
Hmm.
And actually, if you watch the film, they look pretty good. Occasionally, you can see a little spot,
Right.
but I ended up looking at them. They just look so good, and we didn't wanna artifact them up into some modern thing. So you're pretty much seeing the photo. There's a little tint adjustment maybe, but it's more the shape and the size.
Gives it that authenticity.
Yeah.
And did that also give the added benefit of those? Are those photos now documented within the library as well?
Um, Not at this point. So
Okay.
that's kind of up to Phil what he wants to do with this collection. There are some photos because Jean Rose's documents are in our library. So
Hmm.
there are some things, and there are actually some things in our library that I found that I used that were not something Phil had. So I'm not sure what he wants to do. I mean, obviously, we'd probably love to house them, but there are people around the world that know about Orland Bartholomew, and where he ends up wanting to house them, that's up to Phil.
Yeah. Sierra Odyssey just premiered at Fresno State, and I understand you're working on to secure future screenings, and possible broadcasts. So we'll keep you up to date here on Artful Discourse on where you can watch this documentary that chronicles a unique part of our local history. Now, speaking of documenting local history, you and your students have been working on a Central California Portuguese American oral history documentary series called Untold Stories. This has been a partnership with the Portuguese Beyond Borders Institute, or PBBI, and the MCJ program. Can you talk a little bit about this series?
Yeah, actually, we've been doing this for quite a while. We started in 2019, and I can't give you the exact number of video recorded interviews, but roughly we've done, I think the first year or so we did 12, another 12, and then we've done 6 or 8 last year. So what we're doing is we're talking to the Portuguese American community, the Portuguese American immigrants, and getting the history, their sort of rich history of how they have been such a big contribution to the valley, and their immigrant story that was a part of it. More recently, we investigated the Festa, which is
Mm-hmm.
celebrations that happen all up and down the valley. And then we're also going to talk to artists. And so it's a long-term project capturing first-person stories, and those do go into the library. So they will be available for future research. I mean, we're using them to create documentaries, but others can be using them for other works.
Now, last semester we had the PBBI director, Denise Borges, on to talk about the untold stories, the Portuguese Festa in the Central California. And the documentary highlights elements of a typical festival and how festivals that began in Portugal in medieval times has a strong presence in California's 21st century. He talked about how the festas are the key part of maintaining the Portuguese communities throughout the valley and bring people together from all generations. And I really found it kind of interesting. It makes me want to go check one of these out. What was your favorite part about putting this project together?
Well, you kind of primed me to talk about when we went to the Selma Festa.
Yeah.
So that would be a favorite experience, and so I'm trying to think. I had 3 students with me, and it was in the summer, so we're doing it that one as a summer project. We spent the day and kind of got immersed, and everybody is so welcoming. And I think one of the important things about these festas is they're open to the whole community. It's not an inclusive or exclusive kind of experience. And in the smaller communities where these have been going on, it's a community thing. Doesn't matter if you're Portuguese or not. There are other people who celebrate along with the Portuguese Americans as well.
Yeah. Now, how are you involved in the project and how are students involved? Can you kind of break that down a little bit?
Yeah, so my role is director, which means I handle the camera crew. I'm the one that figures out, well, here's when we can be available. And I have enough students that they work for the projects and we travel. We've actually been to Tulare a few times, Hanford, Porterville. We've been up north, not quite up, almost to Livingston. So it's a day-long experience, and um, our job is to set up the cameras, the lighting, the microphones, and get the recording.
Mm-hmm.
And then a partner of ours is another one of our professors, Kelly McCoy, and she typically does the interview. So she does some of the research, works with Denise to get the information, and then he's conducted some interviews, but Kelly's done most of them. So we're kind of a team, and we go out and do our thing and get 30-minute to sometime hour-long interviews with individuals.
And then the students come and bring all this together in the editing, or
So what's nice about this kind of project, it's a team project. So the
right.
students are working with me, they're working with Kelly, they're working with Denise. They do a lot of the work to actually get the recording into a form so we can get transcripts made. And then when we get to the scripting stage, Usually Kelly is the primary writer, but Denise and I help. And then we've always had a student editor. So
Mm-hmm.
both of the documentaries have been edited by a student, usually a senior. In some cases, it's like their final big project before they, go off out into the world. But so they're getting really in-depth editing, and they're getting, lots of feedback and guidance. So from the student perspective, this is real production. This stuff is getting seen, and sometimes seen internationally.
And these are students who are majoring in video production and multimedia.
Yeah, so they're MCJ majors. Usually they're in the film and media arts option. And so they are, looking to start, and actually this is the start of their professional career. So, this is a great real world experience they can take out when they actually graduate and get employed or have their own projects they're doing.
And this was actually the second film in the series. The Festus film was. The first was called Untold Stories, Portuguese Americans Along the 99 Corridor. All that is correct, right? That was
Yeah.
okay. And that one was released in 2021.
That sounds right.
Okay. And that film also won a 2021 Telly Award in the non-broadcast category. How did it feel to get that recognition for that project? And what that also has that impact on the students as well, having that award under their name.
Yeah, because Telly's, if you work in the corporate business, nonprofit communication sector of media, everybody knows what a Telly is.
Mm-hmm.
And you are in good company because you'll see major international corporations, even major broadcasters. So it's exciting to have your work meet the standard of all those others. So it's for the students, that's really good to be part of their background, that they worked on a project that's recognized in essence by professional peers as being a good project.
Before the show, we were talking a little bit about the Festia
Mm-hmm.
documentary and how it's gone international. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it's been submitted to some festivals, and at least one selected it. I'm not sure if they're going to show it or how that's going to work. The other thing that happens too is PBBI's YouTube channel is watched all over the place. And we know that because in 2021, on the first one, it was still COVID era, right? So the premiere was an online Zoom premiere. And we had ambassadors, we had people from Portugal.
Wow.
We did have an international audience, and that's, I think, kind of primes
Mm-hmm.
an audience. There's already an audience there of people, certainly in Portugal and the Azores and in around the California, that know these kind of things are coming out. So I do think it is an international project, and it's exciting to have your work seen by people from other countries.
So what's next in the series? I've heard rumors that you're working on the next film in the series.
There's actually kind of two things sort of going on concurrently and will overlap. This spring, we are in the process of scheduling some of the Portuguese artists. We had talked to a few in the earlier ones, a painter, a lovely gentleman who was a radio broadcaster. And so now we're going to focus on Portuguese artists. We've already recorded a performance of the Portuguese 15-string guitar, which is a unusual and rare instrument. Not that many people know how to play it. And one of the alumni from Fresno State has learned how to play it, and he performed with it. So that's in essence, I guess we're already underway because we've shot that. We just haven't done any interviews yet. The second concurrent activity is there's also going to be a project tied to the Sister City program that Tulare has with one of the communities in the Azores. And we think we'll get a couple interviews maybe this spring, eventually this year or next, actually go to the Azores to get the other side of that story. So that one's a little farther out. I think the artist piece will probably go into post-production next winter. So that will come sooner.
Oh, fantastic. The Untold Stories series is available to watch on YouTube. Just search for the Fresno State PBBI channel on YouTube. Now, as far as the student production, what was that called again? The student production
Service?
service. Yeah.
Yeah, multimedia production service.
My apologies. As far as the multimedia production services goes, do you have other projects you're working on besides the Portuguese Beyond Borders, besides
Oh,
the
yeah. Currently, we are in the middle of producing, when we're done, I think it's going to be 7 videos for the Fresno State Transportation Institute. So there's been 2 things that were shot in the fall for them, and then they basically have, I think, like 5 different thematic areas, and they want a video for each of those. So that's in pre-production. Research and sponsored programs we shot 2 weeks ago, and they're going to shoot some more interviews for them about what they do and how they interact with the campus. So those are 2 currently underway. I think we also have been the post-production facility for the Maddie report
Mhm.
for 8 or 9 years, I
Yeah.
guess. So that's every week there's a team editing that, so it's ready, and then it's put on broadcast on Channel 30, and also they have a KMJ audio version. So there's a number of things. There's others, but it's a ongoing and year-round operation because most of these don't suddenly stop in May. They have
Right.
summer stuff, so we keep working in the summer.
How many students are involved in this right now in the production service? Roughly.
I think I have around 6 or 7 students that are employed.
Hmm.
So when we have a project, there's a budget for the project, so they get, hired onto the project. And then I also teach a class that's about getting practical experience doing this kind of work. So in the class, I'm around I got about 14 people right now that are connected to the class, and they will help with these projects. Sometimes if they're more advanced, they
Hmm.
might actually run a project. Others are very much early stages, so learning how to run the camera and being on the crew is part of their experience.
Do students need to be an MCJ major in order to participate in the production service?
Not really.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, I'm usually giving permission to her. So if somebody wants to take the class, we've realized you can be at any level, at a
Mhm.
nice mixed group. We've had, last semester, we had a student from the graphic arts program. So
Yeah.
they can come from other areas if they're just interested in this kind of learning how to work with clients, because that's the big experience they're getting.
Interesting. That's more of a takeaway than the technical side of it then.
Right. So it combines both. So
Hmm.
now they're developing technical skills, but it's not their project that they're getting graded on. It's a project for an actual client who's going to show this to their, clientele, promote their organization, train people. There's an audience for the work. So um, years ago, I learned that when students can actually contribute to a real project, not an exercise,
Right.
they get so much more out of it, and it's real training. You have to be accountable. The client needs what you want. And so I feel like this is a great experience, especially especially when they're in their latter part of their degree and they're starting to think about going out and trying to get a job. Usually the students who want to work in the field that take the class are able to get going, and quite often are a step ahead of other people because they've seen the whole operation: budgeting, client communications, logging your time, and then the technical,
Right.
right?
It's much more than a grade.
Yes.
Oh,
Just a deep dive experience. I don't grade them grades. It's, did we succeed for the client? That's whether you were successful or not. And what do you want to do differently or improve on? Or you don't know how to do this and you want to learn how to do it. Now you have an idea of what the expectation is.
yeah. All right. Is there anything I missed? Anything you'd like to add? Anything you want to plug?
Uh, that's a curveball.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's It's a fun, for me, experience to be involved in overseeing this operation because it's the amazing projects that come through the door. So the Sierra Odyssey is an example of amazing. I mean, that pushed my creative level, and I tried things I'd not done before in the sound design. So it's very exciting for me. And then it's always pushing the students, and I never know what might come through the virtual door
Mhm.
because an email or something can pop in, and suddenly you're off on an odyssey of production and storytelling. So it makes it a kind of fun and exciting because you never know what's coming next.
Candace, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to talk to you. And just a reminder, this show, Artful Discourse, is now available as a podcast. Just search Artful Discourse wherever you get your podcasts. Artful Discourse is a production of the College of Arts and Humanities at California State University, Fresno. The Dean is Dr. Honora Chapman, and the Associate Dean is Dr. Sergio Laporta. This program is written, directed, and produced by me, Benjamin Kirk, the college's communication specialist. The theme song for Artful Discourse is Maiden Voyage by Fresno State music professor Benjamin Boone from his album, Joy. More information about his music can be found at benjaminboone.com. Special thanks to KFSR and FSR Underground General Manager Julie Lindahl for making this show possible. You can learn more about the College of Arts and Humanities and find an archive of our shows at our website, cah.fresnostate.edu, or on our blog, fresnostatecah.com.